أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. Okay. Firstly, I want to begin with a question. Why are we here? To restart Iman. That's good. Excellent. Most obvious. To restart Iman. What would we want from here? And you can't say restart Iman again. If you look deeper, what is it that we actually want? Why do we want to boost our Iman? Is it just to say that we have high Iman? Or what's the outcome of having high Iman? What are some of the things? And there's many things, it's not just one thing. What are some of the things that we want? Closer. Okay, so indeed, feeling. What else?
To strengthen.
To strengthen our Iman. What does that mean practically?
You're focused.
You're focused. Allah is on your radar. Anything else? There's no right or wrong answers, by the way. I'll tell you why I'm asking these questions. Because there are many pillars of Iman. And there are many doors to Allah. The way you might get closer to Allah is not the same way I get closer to Allah. And what increases your Iman might not be the same way that increases my Iman. So if I'm a doctor and you're all coming because you need medication, I can't just say, okay, everyone here take Panadol and you should be good to go. Does that make sense? So if we need an Iman boost, it means that our Iman, and Iman goes up and down. The Prophet ﷺ said this, and this is in our belief. So this is normal that Iman goes up and down. The question is, some things for different people make the Iman go up, and different things for different people make the Iman go down. So something, for example, that makes my Iman go down might not be the same thing for you, or it might have a different effect. And what brings up my Iman might be different for you. So it's always good to ask. It's always good to ask what are some of the things that you think bring your Iman low? Because if we find out what some of the core problems are, it's easier to find the medication. And this, I think, would be more effective than just talking about Allah or talking about Jannah or talking about something. So, does anyone want to have a... And again, there's no right or wrong answers. Or do you want me to start? Alright, I'll start. So, one thing that would put my Iman down is if an opportunity came from Allah to do something and I can do it and I didn't do it. So this is something that you feel decreases your Iman. It's something between you and Allah. So Iman does come out practically in actions, but this is just one example. So tell me some examples, and it doesn't have to be personal. It could be things about about other people, or other people have spoken, or things you've learned, or so on. What do you think brings Iman down?
Not doing the sunnah.
Not doing the sunnah. Excellent. Especially when you know this is something that if you truly love Allah, you will do it. And every sunnah we miss, if we miss a sunnah strategically, because because there is higher priority, you don't feel bad about this. In fact, this increases your iman. But if you miss a sunnah and you could have, and it's just being lazy, and you know you can do it and you didn't, it kills you inside. Yeah? Alright, anything else?
Bring our Iman lower. Question. Temptations.
Temptations, good, excellent. Temptations. You are now moving into the dunya, and this is one of the points. So there are symptoms of having low iman. What are these symptoms, or some of these symptoms? Number one, if we commit a sin or something haram, this decreases our iman. If we begin to feel that our heart has gotten a bit harder, the things that used to make us cry before, it doesn't bring a tear out anymore. This is a symptom, again, of low iman. Umar al-Khattab, how tough was he? And how scary was he? But if something, he would see a child cry because of a neglect, his heart would crumble. And his tears, and Umar, we know this about Umar, he used to have always black lines because it was always dusty in Arabia. So there used to be a lot of dust that would cover your face naturally. So when he would cry, you would see the lines. That's how soft his heart was, because it was filled with iman. Another symptom of low iman is we are careless in our worship. We are praying actions, and our mind is somewhere else. Another one is laziness in worship, which is, as you mentioned, the sunnah. I can do the sunnah, but I'm not doing it. I'm lazy. This isn't something that's bad. These are symptoms that if we see them and if we recognize them, it becomes easier for us to say, okay, I can see this is like on my own dashboard. I can see if the temperature is up or if the temperature is low, if my fuel tank is full or if my fuel tank is empty, if I'm over revving and not going fast, or if I'm under revving and I'm going 100 miles an hour. These are signs and symptoms of our iman. Depression or moodiness or loneliness. And this is very common these days. And this is also a symptom of low iman. Because no one would get depressed if they knew that Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir, that Allah is able to do anything and everything. That in Allah's hands is qadar, and everything is written, and everything is planned, and everything is timed, and everything will happen in the time that it is meant to happen, because that's when it happens. Why would you be depressed? If my life was in, I love Sharif, but if my life was in Sharif's hands, I would be depressed. In fact, not Sharif. If my life was in any human's hands, I would be anxious. When it's in Allah's hands, go with the flow. It's the best. And everything that happens to you is the best. Every good thing that happens to you is the best. And every bad thing that happens to you, wallahi, is the best. Umar al-Khattab used to say, I do not care in what state I wake up in the morning. I don't care how I wake up, whether it's good or bad. Because I don't know what is good for me, and I don't know what is bad for me. Because Allah says, you might like something, or you might hate something, but in it is a lot of good. And you might like something, and in it is a lot of evil. And what does he end the verse with? Wallahu ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun. Allah knows. That should be enough. He's saying Allah knows, and he's adding to that, and you don't know. Even if you're trying to think you want to know, and you think you might know, and you're trying to figure out how you know, relax your mind. Does Allah know? That's the best. He looks after me. He looks after animals that are helpless. He looks after newborn babies that have no power or intellect or anything to look after themselves. And He organizes everything for them. If you ever think that Allah might not look after your affairs, just remember when you were 3 months old, that's the same Allah back then as it is now. Another symptom is not being affected by the Quran. If you listen to the Quran or you read the Quran and it's just reading or it's just sounds. One of the scholars, look how he would feel or understand the words of Allah. When he would explain a verse, he wouldn't say because Allah says in the Quran. He would say because I heard Allah say, and then he would mention the verse. Can you see the relationship he has with the words of Allah? It's as though Allah is talking to him. That's the connection that he has with the book of Allah. Whether we read Arabic or whether we don't read Arabic. Most of the Ummah are non-Arabs. Majority of them are non-Arabs. But I know for a fact that some of them have a lot more Iman than Arabs. Because they understand the words of Allah, even if they can't read it. Another symptom is that you feel far from Allah. And the reality is exactly that. We are far from Allah. Not Allah is far from us. Allah is always near. And He mentions this in the Quran. He said, we are nearer to them than their jugular veins. Allah is with you. وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. He is with you wherever you are. Never for one moment think Allah is never there. Never for one moment think that Allah is not listening to you. Musa alayhi salam, when he was commanded by Allah to go to Fir'aun. And Fir'aun wants to kill him. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ya Musa, go back to Fir'aun. And he says, Ya Allah, we fear that he might oppress us or harm us. He might kill us. We are scared. Being scared is no problem. What does Allah say? لا تخافا إنني معكم أسمع وأرى. Don't be scared. Why? Because He says, I am with you. I hear and I see. The Rabb of Musa is the Rabb of you and me and you 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 and you. That's the same Rabb. لا تخافا. I am not scared. إن معي ربي سيهدي. Allah is with me, He will guide me. Never think Allah is far. Another sign is that we say one thing, but we act something else. That we have low Iman. Another sign of the heart that we have low Iman is that we are happy when something bad happens to someone else. And this is a sign of low Iman. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, you do not believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. So the moment you begin to love when someone has something that brings them happiness, this is a sign of Iman. That your heart is filled with Iman, that something good happened, I'm happy for you. Your happiness is my happiness. This is a sign of Iman. If something good happens to them and you feel, this is a sign of Iman. This is a symptom. And on the other hand, when something bad happens to them, there's something inside that you feel a little bit happy. Again, this is a symptom of low Iman. And why am I mentioning these things? Because sometimes there might be just a passing thought and it goes. And sometimes it might be a passing thought that you begin to think a little bit about it. And sometimes you might think a little bit more about it. And then you might begin to develop thoughts. And then you might begin to develop talking. And then you might discuss the idea with someone. And eventually it turns into something. until it becomes part of your understanding. So this is why the moment you see something bad happen to someone, you should show concern straight away and speak it. This tongue cleans the heart as well. And if something good happens, you should express it as well and show that happiness. It becomes a habit in you in cleaning and purifying your heart.
What do you mean by speak it when something bad happens?
So, if something bad happens to them?
Yeah, so like when something good happens to them, oh my god, mashallah.
Yes. When something bad happens, what do you need? How can I help you? I'm making dua for you that this, relax. You're making dua for them that Allah purifies them. Or how can I help? Or don't worry, it's okay. You're feeling what they're feeling. And you're reacting as though this is happening to you. Prophet said this ummah is one body. If you feel pain, I should feel it too. We're an empathetic ummah. We feel empathy towards one another.
Even if you, for example, if you like want to fake it till you make it, right?
Yes.
You say that, but you don't necessarily feel that, but you want to feel that. Does that become hypocrisy, or is that you trying really hard?
This whole thing of fake it till you make it, this is a Western terminology that they've packaged it in. But do you know anyone that stood up instantly and able to pray tahajjud and able to cry during the night on the spot instantly? In that case, you fake it till you make it in your tahajjud as well. In that case, you do. One of the scholars, he said, I kept praying tahajjud for 20 years until I began to taste the sweetness of tahajjud. He's trying, he's making juhud in feeling and cleansing and becoming this person that he knows pleases Allah. Because the reality is, not everyone is pure, and not everyone is perfect, and not everyone is a mu'min and a muhsin. The one that knows this and is struggling to try to fix it and knows this is a bad feeling that I have, or this is a bad understanding, where I got it from, Allah, maybe it was my parents, maybe it was my uncles, maybe it was my environment, maybe it was one of my friends one time, maybe, but you become aware of it and you begin to now fix it until it becomes second nature in you, until that becomes part of you. So this is another sign of you acknowledging and being aware of this symptom of low iman. And by the way, this is all good. The more of these problems we can make aware between ourselves, the easier it is to target and cure and fix. And you are the winners. We are the winners. Another symptom is not considering good deeds. Saying there's good deeds, you don't consider doing good deeds. Or even disregarding small deeds. Low iman is that you start to think, this is nothing, this is whatever, don't worry about that, this is... But the one with high iman, subhanAllah, there was a small thing is something big in their heart. When we hold the mushaf, we know generally we put it in a high place. How do we put it? Doesn't matter, so long as it's in a high place. There was one man who was always in the masjid. His heart was filled with Iman. When he used to see, this is the mushaf, yeah? When he used to see the mushaf like this, he used to go and say, Astaghfirullah, and he used to turn it like this. For us, we look at it and in his heart, this is something worthy. And it might be that this small deed would be the thing that Allah would look at him favorably and say, do whatever you want in dunya, I've forgiven you because of the honor he has given this book. But the one with small iman, with low iman, these things aren't even on their radar. And I'm not saying we should be going around being absolutely paranoid about everything, but these are just some indicators of how healthy our iman is. Another one is lack of motivation for da'wah work. When we don't really feel that we need to spread this message, that we need to follow this sunnah, this is again a symptom of low iman. some crucial ones are these. Panic and fear at the time of affliction. When a calamity happens, do you lose your head? Or are you calm and collected? Stay calm. It's okay. Critical thinking. Every situation, whenever anything happens, no matter how big, is this happening by the qadr of Allah? Is this happening by His plan and by His will and by His wisdom and by His knowledge and by His awareness? 100%. My reaction will determine my heart. My reaction will determine my Iman. My reaction will determine whether I get punished for this or whether I get rewarded for this. If a calamity happens and I lose it and I start smashing walls, would there be consequences for it? 100%. If the same calamity happens and I bear it and I say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, la ilaha illallah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, or even just khair inshallah, and I'm patient, Abu Bakr used to say that the calamity of losing the reward of patience is bigger than the calamity that you require the patience for. So if a calamity happens, that's one calamity. If you don't have patience, and you end up, because you don't have patience, you end up losing the reward of patience, that's a bigger calamity than the original one. Because in Islam, in the Quran, Allah mentions the reward for many acts. For those that pray, for those that give sadaqah, for those that forgive, for all these things, Allah mentions all different types of rewards. Except patience. You never find the reward of patience in the Quran. He doesn't mention it. And this is a sign of the greatness of the reward of patience. It's so great, He didn't even mention it in the Quran. And the Quran is great. Because on that day, on the day of judgment, He will reward as He sees fit. It's not something that's measurable, the reward of patience. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, and give glad tidings to those who are patient. That when a calamity strikes, they say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And not just they say it. Because it's a word, it can be said, understood, not understood. But when they say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, in other words, whatever happened, it's a reminder you're saying to yourself, that fake it till you make it. You're reminding the words, your own ears are listening to your words, that with all of this, we all belong to Allah anyway, and we're all going to return back to Him anyway. So it's not even my property. All of this belongs to Allah to begin with. So why should I not be patient? Why should I go crazy or nuts or whatever? Another crucial one is arguing or disagreement which hardens the heart. How much do we argue in life? How much do we argue with people? How much do we argue with our spouses or with children or friends or colleagues or peers or whatever? And then I'll give you this example. Some of the scholars of Tazkiyah, of the ones that purify the hearts, they would often tell the scholars of fiqh, the fuqaha, they would say, spend some time in ibadah other than knowledge of fiqh. Why? Because the knowledge of fiqh is always about evidences. So you want to come to a ruling, but the Prophet ﷺ said this one, the Sahabis said this one, the Salaf did this. So it's constant, not arguing in the bad sense, but it's good arguing. But the fact of them going back and forth, it begins to just toughen the heart and not keep it soft in the remembrance of Allah. And that's in discussions and arguments of knowledge for benefit of Islam. What about when it's arguing and shaitan is blowing from here and shaitan is blowing from there? and people are divided and people cause problems and all these things. So this arguing and discussion and disagreements and all of this is also a symptom of low iman. I mentioned something a few days ago that even Allah hates arguing. In Islam, arguing is not liked. And you find those that have Iman in their hearts, wherever there's arguments, they run away from. I don't care. Just, whatever. Although even if they're right, whatever you think, no worries, tell us, done. I just don't want to argue. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, the first person in this hadith, the first person he mentions is the one who gives up arguing. He says, I guarantee a house. The Prophet ﷺ, if he says something, it's the truth. He said, I guarantee a house in the outskirts of Jannah. It's within Jannah, but on the edges of Jannah. I promise, I guarantee. He said, I'm the guarantor. In other words, when someone signs on your behalf, I'm a guarantor for the one who gives up arguing. He didn't just say who gives up arguing. He said who gives up arguing even if they're the right ones. Even if they're the ones that are right. They just don't argue. And finally, you find yourself, and this is probably one of the biggest indicators, low iman, when the dunya becomes more nicer. You begin to love more of the dunya. The dunya takes up more of your head. The dunya takes up more of your heart. I like this and I like this and I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to buy this and I want to sell this and I want to... And then you compare it with how much time you spend remembering Allah. How much time you spend learning about Allah. How much time you spend... And the one brother he mentioned the other day, he said, you are going to spend a lot more time in your grave than you are in your house right now. Why are you spending so much time and effort in beautifying the house? Beautify your grave with your good deeds. So, the comparison, and it's good to do these checks in ourselves. So, when we start to know these are some of the symptoms and these are some of the key reasons why we are here to begin with, it becomes easier for our Iman to boost. And when we become aware of how and what boosts our Iman, it's something that inshallah we can begin to manage ourselves and not just rely on external sources. So if at times your Iman is low, you can't just say, well, no one's giving talks, or there's, the imams aren't doing anything, or no one's doing anything. You begin to know that you don't have to rely on anyone. You can work directly between you and Allah. So, Iman does go up and Iman does go down. And this is normal. The heart gets clean and the heart gets rusty. SubhanAllah, you find one of the fundamental things in increasing your Iman is really, really, really the words of Allah. I didn't say the Quran. We call it the Quran, but I am saying the words of Allah. Umar ibn al-Khattab, who had one of the toughest hearts before Islam. In fact, he was an enemy of Islam. His desires was to kill the Prophet ﷺ. And the night that he accepted Islam, he was on his way to the Prophet ﷺ to kill him. Umar al-Khattab was walking through the streets of Mecca. He had a necklace with a sword, his sword hanging from it. So he had a rope, a necklace, and his sword was hanging from it. And he's walking through the streets of Mecca, looking for who? Looking for Muhammad. So while he's walking, one of the Sahaba, he saw him, and he knew, you could see it in his eyes, that you could see what he's doing and what he wants to do and where he's going. So this Sahabi was very quick. He said, Ya Umar, where are you going? And when he began to say that either none of your business, or I'm going to see the Prophet, or I'm going to find Muhammad, or where's Muhammad? When he tried to say, why do you want to do this? And he's trying to buy some time and trying to, redirect him. And, he said, and subhanAllah, Khattab, he could feel and sense very quickly. He said, from my judgment, I can tell that you've also become Muslim too. And if you have, I might start with killing you first. So when this Sahabi, when he felt that, it might be my end, he was very quick. He said, well, maybe you want to start with your sister first, because she accepted Islam. So Umar Khattab, and what did he do? He didn't say at the beginning, he did it just to buy time to protect the Prophet ﷺ. So Umar Khattab, he goes to his sister, and no one can talk to Umar Khattab. He goes and knocks on the door of his sister's house, and her husband is there as well. So he comes in and he says, did you become Muslim? And her husband and her, they said yes. So Umar Khattab, he starts bashing the husband, and he puts him on the ground and starts bashing him and bashing him and bashing. And his sister, the man's wife, the Sahabi's wife, is looking, and that's her husband getting bashed. And Umar Khattab, he wasn't like just any skinny guy or some crazy guy. He was huge and he was strong, and no one could out-wrestle him. So if he starts bashing someone, he's going to get a lot of pain. She tries to get Umar Khattab off. He cracks her across the face, and she goes landing on the other side of the room. When he sees her and how determined she was, and she had blood on her face, his heart changed. And then when he saw that, he stopped. And then he said, tell me what Muhammad has brought. And she had one piece of leather with some Quran written on it. And she said, you can't touch this because you're najis. Go wash yourself and then you can touch it. So on the spot, he went and he made ghusl and he came back. And what words did Allah decree that were written on that piece of leather for Umar ibn Khattab to read first and for his heart to change? There was surah, or the first ayat of Surah Taha. Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم طه ما أنزلنا عليك القرآن لتشقى. We did not bring down this Quran for you to have distress. إلا تذكرة لمن يخشى, except as a reminder for those that are conscious of Allah. تنزيلا ممن خلق الأرض والسماوات العلى الرحمن على العرش استوى. It is brought down from the one who created the heavens and the earth, and Allah rested on his throne, on his arsh. When he heard these first verses, he knew that these were written by a man. And he said to his sister with blood on her face, he said, these words were written by someone that deserves to be worshipped. And he said, take me to Muhammad. At first she didn't believe him. And she said, no. And then he said, take me to Muhammad. So they directed him to where the Prophet ﷺ was, and he was in Dar al-Arqam, teaching the Sahaba their deen. Hamza was there, a lot of the Sahaba were there. Knocks on the door. Who is it? They were giving a secret dawah in that time. Someone looks through the door said it's Umar ibn Khattab. Obviously, they don't know what's happened up until now. It's Umar ibn Khattab. What does Hamza say? So what if it's Umar? Bring him in, and if he's going to cause trouble, we'll kill him with his own sword. So then the Prophet says, let him in. They open the door. The Prophet ﷺ, and we know that Anbiya had the power of 30 men. That's how strong the Prophet ﷺ was. The moment Umar Khattab has the door open in front of him, the Prophet ﷺ, he grabs him and he smashes him up against the wall. And he says, Ya Umar, when are you going to stop until Allah destroys you? And at that moment, Allah put in his heart Iman. And Umar Khattab, the big giant, collapsed. And he said, I have come to bear witness that there is no God except Allah and that you are his messenger. These are the words of Allah that triggered the heart of Umar Khattab. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, he mentions about reciting, he mentions about also contemplating, about pondering, about reflecting these words of Allah. This whole concept of boosting our Iman is nothing more than us forgetting the remembrance of Allah. And I'm not talking about dhikr in the sense of just adhkar. Dhikr is remembrance. Remembrance of Allah. Remembrance of Allah as the wise. In other words, everything that's happening to me in my life, there is wisdom behind it. And I know for a fact, one day I will see this wisdom. I might not see it now. But knowing that the wise is in control puts my heart at rest. Knowing that the knowledgeable one, the one that knows, puts my heart at rest. SubhanAllah. When you read through the book of Allah, you see how valuable you are as a believer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he says, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. You are the best of nations brought forth to mankind. If you allow the words of dunya to get to you, always remember the words of Allah. You are the best. As humans, we all have shortcomings. You might hear people saying, why did you do this and why did you do that, or you stuffed this up, or you're late on this one, or this, or whatever. And eventually all these words, they go through your brain until you hear the words of Allah. When the Prophet ﷺ, he teaches us and he shows us how valuable your blood is. If I was to ask you now, what would you feel if the Kaaba was destroyed? Is this something good or bad? Would you feel happy or would you feel angry? Would you feel sad? Would you feel happy or not? You wouldn't. You are more valuable than the Kaaba. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, هَدْمُ الْكَعْبَ أَهْوَنُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ مِنْ قَتْلِ مُسْلِمٍ. The destruction of the Kaaba is easier in the sight of Allah than the killing of one Muslim. You are valuable. You are sacred. Not just you. Your blood is sacred. The fact that Allah created the angels with no desires, just obedience. And He created the animals with no obedience and just desires. And then He created us with both. When we hold our desires and worship Allah like the angels, we become better than them. Because they don't have any problems with only obeying and worshipping Allah. But we have the desires that we have to hold. If we are able to hold our desires and worship Allah and obey Him, we become better than the angels. Otherwise, if we let go of our obedience and our worship and only fulfill our desires, then we become worse than the animals, because the animals, what more can you expect from them? You are all valuable. You are all part of the Ummah of Muhammad. SubhanAllah. You might not notice it because it's part of your daily life. One time the Prophet ﷺ was sitting and he was saying that if you sleep with your wife, you get hasanat. So the Sahaba, joking, they started chuckling and they said, Ya Rasulullah, like, even if we just sleep with our wives, like, we're getting hasanat, like, we're not even doing any good deeds. Like, how can we get hasanat for doing something like this? He said, if you were to commit zina, would you expect to get sins because of it? They said, of course. He said, so if you do it in halal, shouldn't you expect to get hasanat for it? Can you see how much Allah wants to forgive us? Can you see how much Allah has sent and has given and has done and has revealed just to take you into Jannah? Allah did not create you to punish you. Full stop. Allah did not create you to punish you. Allah created you and He sent messengers after messengers after messengers after messengers just to guide you. And that if you commit one sin, it's only recorded as one sin, but He tells the angel, wait, don't record it. Maybe he might make istighfar. And if he makes istighfar, khalas, get rid of it. And then when he commits one good deed, the minimum is 10 hasanah. Isn't that evidence Allah does not want to harm you? Allah does not want to punish you. Do you think that in a city where people are disobeying Allah day and night, He won't look at you favorably? That while the whole city is committing shirk and haram and sin day and night, and you're talking to Him and making dua and praying and doing a good deed or not doing something because it's haram, you don't think Allah can see the difference? This is a gift from Allah. I'll tell you something else. You did not come here yourself. You did not come here by your car. You did not come here by any means of transport. You came here because Allah wanted you here. One of the scholars, he said, Allah has made some rituals an obligation for you, like Salah and Ramadan and Hajj and so on. He said, but in doing so, He has only made Jannah an obligation for you. Because the only way to get to Jannah is through Salah, through these pillars, right? So He said, okay, if I want my servants to be into Jannah, they have to do these things, so I'm going to make these things compulsory, so Jannah becomes compulsory for them. You came here because Allah wanted you here. The people that come together to remember Allah, you know what happens to them? I'll tell you what happens to them. They're sitting and remembering Allah. And you know when you look in the night sky and it's all black, and you see those sparkling stars, that's how Allah sees when He looks at the dunya, and the darkness and oppression and falsehood that covers it, it's all dark. And then He sees people that come together to remember Him. He sees them like shining stars as we look up in the sky. The people that come together to remember Him, Allah mentions them to the angels. He says, look at my servants. They're coming together to remember me. This isn't anyone saying this. This is Allah Azza wa Jalla. He's saying, look at my servants coming together, remembering me. He said, what are they asking of me? He says to the angels. And the angels, they're recording everything that we're saying. And He knows what we're saying. He doesn't need to ask the angels. But He is asking the angels. It's like He wants us to hear the conversation. He says, what are they asking? They said they're asking for your Jannah. So Allah, He smiles and He said, have they even seen my Jannah? They haven't even seen it and they're asking for it. Imagine if they see it. And then he says, what else are they asking for me? What else are they asking of me? And then they say, Ya Allah, they're asking for your forgiveness. And then Allah says, I forgive them. All of them. Whatever sin they might have committed. I remember hearing once one of the scholars of Medina, he said, you might be in a gathering that remembers Allah. And you leave that gathering as though the day your mother gave birth to you, with no sin, and you don't even know it. This is Allah that is putting so much. He just wants to forgive you. And then the angels, they say, but Ya Rab, there is someone among them that is not good. Or she is really not good, or he is really not good. They didn't even come here for that reason. They actually just came here because they wanted to, I don't know, drink a cup of water and they were going to keep going. And I thought, you know what, might as well just stay. Or they came for something else. And he said, this is a gathering that no one regrets being among them. I've forgiven them too. Just being in the presence of those that come to remember Allah, Allah forgives them. And we don't even say anything. Imagine. No talking, no nothing. We just come, we sit, we leave, sinless. Allah wanted you to come here while many others didn't come. And it's not only this gathering, but any gathering, you can see the favors of Allah. I remember one brother, he always used to tell me this story. He said, when I became aware of Allah, he said, I thought maybe I can still get away with some things. And I tried to do this thing, or I tried to go to this place, or I tried to call this person. And he said, every single time I tried to do this, Allah would make all my plans stuff up. Until sometimes I'm stuck in the city, I'm stuck with nothing. He goes, all my plan will stuff up, everything upside down. And he said, deep down, I knew that Allah was saying, no, Habibi, I don't wish this for you. No, I wish something better for you. Deep down, I knew this. But he didn't want to tell himself. He just kept, no, I'm going to keep doing this, and I want to keep doing that, and I want to keep going here and going there. And every single time he kept doing something or tried to do something, Allah would make everything stop. He goes, until I realized that Allah, there's something between me and Allah. And he goes, that's when I realized that Allah was protecting me all this time, and he didn't want to. Although me, myself, I wanted to go off track. He goes, Allah just wouldn't let me. Allah, Wallahu yuridu an yatuba alaykum. Allah yurid. When you say, I want something, I need something, I want something, you say, ana urid. Like it's a need, it's a want. It's I need to have this, I want to have this. Allah says, Wallahu yurid an yatuba alaykum. Allah, He needs and He wants to forgive you. For you to repent and come back. Allah wants that. To the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that if you do not commit sins and ask for forgiveness, Allah will replace you with the people that will commit sins and ask for forgiveness just so He can forgive you. That's how much Allah loves forgiveness. He wants to exercise it. If you don't commit any sins at all, which is impossible, every person on earth except for the Anbiya commits sins. If people don't commit sins anymore, Allah would replace them. He loves forgiving so much because He only wants the best for you. Because you are not something easy. You are something valuable. You are something extremely valuable. And Allah mentions this in the Quran. So, number one, what we mentioned before about the symptoms of low Iman. Be aware of all these, and from now until next week, start to gauge your heart and your mind and your thoughts and your words and your actions, and see where your symptoms are. And then we begin to heal and fix the patches and all of this in our Iman. And inshallah, over the coming weeks, we'll build our Iman stronger together. Okay? And by the way, again, remember, you are not something simple. You guys are valuable. Regardless of what you think of yourselves. Regardless what you're told. Every single one of you is valuable in the eyes of Allah. Walk on this earth humbly, but don't think that any even disbeliever is better in the eyes of Allah than you, and that there is enough of an honor. And on top of that, being part of the Ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. Okay? Inshallah. We finish it here. Inshallah, if you have any questions or anything, otherwise we can finish it. Any questions?
Comment.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. I'll say something. And I've said this often. Sometimes, if I say something, and I'm being completely honest, sometimes people say this, and I don't say it's me. And I'll tell you what it is. It's, if you feel it in your heart for you to say that was beautiful, this is a sign that Allah is opening your heart, and that your heart is not blocked. Because I could say the same words to someone else, and they're on another planet. So even that, saying that it's beautiful, is a blessing from Allah. And it's a sign that Allah wishes good for you. Alhamdulillah. May Allah protect you all and bless you all, and increase us all in our Iman, and allow us to see all the parts that will take us away from this low Iman, and to stay away from it, and to protect us from it, and to increase our Iman, that we meet Him and live on earth for His sake, and die for His sake, and meet Him, inshallah, with a good clean heart and good high Iman. Ameen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.